after President Trump slammed the Mexican drug cartels.
Unless Mexico is going to treat the United States fairly, with respect, such a meeting would be fruitless, and I want to go a different route.
Also, we've learned the Trump administration may impose fees and taxes on imports from Mexico as high as 20% to pay for the border wall. We'll have the latest. And President Trump's chief White House strategist blistering the national left-wing media in a rare interview. Steve Bannon saying the media should be embarrassed and humiliated and keep its mouth shut and just listen for a while. Ambassador John Bolton, Steve Moore, conservative commentator David Horowitz among our guests tonight. Good evening, everybody. President Trump today clearly establishing the terms for future negotiations with Mexico concerning a southern border wall as well as trade. It led to Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto. Well, he pulled out of a meeting with Mr. Trump scheduled for next Tuesday. President Trump said the summit would have been fruitless anyway unless Mexico demonstrated it would treat the United States fairly and with respect. Mr. Trump detailed the one-sided deal with Mexico since NAFTA was created during his speech to Republicans gathered for their annual retreat in Philadelphia.
I've said many times that the American people will not pay for the wall, and I've made that clear to the government of Mexico. NAFTA has been a terrible deal, a total disaster for the United States from its inception, costing us as much as $60 billion a year with Mexico alone in trade deficits. You say, who negotiates these deals? Not to mention millions of jobs and thousands of factories and plants closing down all over our country.
And White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer told reporters that a 20% import tax might be one way in which the administration would pay for that border wall.
Our country's policy is to tax exports and let imports flow freely in, which is ridiculous. But by doing it that way, we can do $10 billion a year and easily pay for the wall just through that mechanism alone. If you think about what a border tax on imports from countries like Mexico that we have a huge trade deficit does, that's really going to provide the funding.
And shortly after that, Spicer said the 20% import tax was just one of a number of options that might be used to pay for the construction of the wall. Also today, UK Prime Minister Theresa May delivered her speech to Republicans in Philadelphia, and there she discussed forging a strong relationship with President Trump and outlined her vision ahead of the British vote to leave the European Union in Parliament. Or oppose Brexit and then become Prime Minister and be able to give highfalutin speeches in Philadelphia. May will be the first foreign leader to meet with President Trump tomorrow at the White House. Joining me now to talk about the way President Trump has changed the debate concerning U.S. relations with Mexico, the opportunities ahead in a post-Brexit United Kingdom, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, American Enterprise Institute Senior Fellow, John Bolton. Great to have you here. I have to say, I got a kick out of the Prime Minister taking it upon herself to talk about change. She sounded like she's embracing it 7 months after the Brexit vote.
Better late than never.
Absolutely.
And she's enthusiastic now.
Enrique Peña Nieto. My. The fellow, he just doesn't quite get it, does he?
It's an amazing thing that he himself pulled the plug on the meeting with Trump. I mean, obviously, he felt that the announcements had put him in a bad position. I think he misread that. I think he would have done better in Mexico to stand up to the big Yankee president. But by pulling out now and saying no negotiation, I think he's cleared the field for Trump. It's a big tactical mistake on Peña Nieto's part.
Well, I think also Trump laid something of, if I may say, a bear trap for him, which he walked straight into. This is a president, Peña Nieto in Mexico. He has only a 12% approval rating. The country has a stagnant at best economy, and cartels are running much of the country. It's a mess by any judgment, and this is it seems clear to me at least, that President Trump is creating a broad strategy here to win on this issue, whether it be in the corruption of the government, the violence of the society that is Mexico's, and the negligence on the part of those companies in this country who have just simply, into all of that, thrown their employees, their investment dollars into plants down there.
Yeah, I think President Trump is pursuing a different kind of negotiating strategy with Mexico, and I think more broadly internationally than prior presidents have done. Other presidents may have a goal, but when they go into negotiation, it's very pared down. It's just like a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of the other thing, and then they don't get even the little bit of this and that. What Trump has said is, I want the big picture. He'll compromise from that. That's the art of the deal.
He's negotiating.
But he'll still get what he wants. But by framing the issue himself, he puts the other side on the defensive. That's what the tactic is. With Mexico, it just worked.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think you're exactly right. This is a president, as they say, it's early days, has already established a penchant for action. People, whether their countries negotiating trade or whether they are potential foes geopolitically, militarily, they know that this president is very serious and that there are consequences that flow from his words.
Yeah. How many times during the campaign did he say there will be a wall and Mexico will pay for it? And now he said, I'm president, and I remember what I said during the campaign, and I'm putting it on the table. That alone distinguishes him from about 99% of the run-of-the-mill politicians who, when they get to Washington, decide to become part of the system. That will have a profound domestic impact as well.
I think also that it's reasonable to say that the business leadership in this country, in the form of the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, this is not a capricious assault on those institutions. I assure you, I've been battling them for years on these issues. They simply did not take seriously the responsibilities of human rights in Mexico and the impact of what they're doing in the course they followed.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the damage to Mexican civil society that the drug cartels have done, it really does take you back.
Also NAFTA and its dislocation of families and entire villages in some places.
But this is something that Obama never recognized as a problem. Now, so I think the Mexico thing, Trump has definitely defined. And I think on the British side, I really think this is one of the biggest opportunities that the Trump presidency has. It's critical for Britain. It could be critical for the United States. We're going to have to work out a new trade relationship with Britain, and it's like writing on a blank slate. Donald Trump with Britain can write the kind of trade relationship he wants and demonstrate it works. Stakes are very high for Theresa May, but if she succeeds with Trump, it will increase Britain's leverage against the EU in their exit negotiations.
Yeah, I think it's really something of a quandary now for the British with this ridiculous, an absurd establishment, Supreme Court as they style it, to have said that a public referendum, that is all of the voters of the UK, their votes don't count unless somehow it's rubber stamped by Parliament, is one of the most mindless pieces of law that I've ever seen.
Yeah, look, I think that the decision was clearly wrong, but the encouraging thing is it was an 8-3 vote, a very strong dissent that can come back to be helpful. And I think the parliamentary strategists of the conservative government now looking at this think they can get through with a very short bill that basically says we're going to negotiate withdrawal. They're working now on pumping it through the House of Commons. So I think this is maybe not even a bump in the road. At least I hope not.
Nigel Farage was with us, the leader of the Brexit effort, former head of the UK Independence Party. He said last night that if the people of Europe and the people of the UK think that they have seen some unrest, for the Parliament to deny the referendum and the will of the British people, there will be a revolution.
I think so. And, you know, when the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats say they're going to try and stop this bill, I say, knock yourself out, go to it. The Labour Party is about to disappear. This would be the end of it.
If anybody has any ambiguity whatsoever about, if there's any ambiguity, misunderstanding about how bad an idea Brexit is, 2 years to get the heck out of the thing. And the British people are famously patient and constrained. they're putting up with it. I'd say get the heck out.
But see, now the United States can give Britain the exit it really needs, and the European Union's going to say, hey, we'd like that kind of deal with the United States, too. This is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and to circle back to the original point, Donald Trump, President Trump has made it clear to all he's interested in bilateral trade, nation to nation, none of these comprehensive multinational platforms that are impossible to unwind or to, in fact, to implement efficiently or effectively. John Bolton, always great to see you.
Glad to be with you.
Thanks for being here. We're coming right back. A lot more straight ahead. Stay with us. President Trump delivering on campaign promises, and he's just getting started.
I'm going to keep a lot of them, and I've kept a lot of them already. Everyone's talking about it, and we're going to do things that I said we were going to do.
Day after day, Mr. Trump is working hard to make America great again. Our commander-in-chief also promising to crack down on sanctuary cities, but some mayors on the left vowing to defy President Trump. We'll take that up with one of the country's leading Republicans, Randy Evans, who joins me next. We'll be right back. Stay with us. President Trump's chief White House strategist, Steve Bannon, torching the national left-wing media. In an interview with the New York Times, Bannon argued news organizations have been embarrassing and they have been humiliated by the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. Bannon said, quote, "The mainstream media has not fired or terminated anyone associated with following our campaign. Look at the Twitter feeds of those people. They were outright activists of the Clinton campaign." He goes on, "That's why you have no power," referring to the New York Times. "You were humiliated." President Trump tonight praising the mayor of Miami-Dade. Trump tweeting this, talking about having immediate impact from his policy decisions. Miami-Dade mayor drops sanctuary policy. Right decision. Strong. Miami-Dade is counting on receiving some $350 million in federal funds this year, and the mayor, Carlos Jimenez, ordered county jails to immediately comply with federal immigration detention requests. That ends the county's position as a sanctuary for illegal immigrants. Mr. Trump's Department of Homeland Security will also be publishing a weekly list of crimes committed nationwide by illegal immigrants in sanctuary cities. Well, joining me now, former senior advisor to the Newt Gingrich campaign, Randy Evans. Randy, great to have you with us tonight. I mean, you talk about
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. An immediate impact with the sanctuary policies. I mean, that's it. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised, because I think rapidly the media, the mayors, the intellectual elite are understanding President Trump is a man who says what he means and he means what he says, and he gets it done. So often, Lou, you and I have seen these politicians go to Washington and have political amnesia. They forgot everything they said for the last 9 months. This president has proven that he understands one important concept that Ronald Reagan talked about. Don't let the urgent drive out the important. He knows what's important, which is getting the economy back on track, making America safe again, and building better trade deals, and he's tackling it right out of the box.
Over the course of the campaign, it seems to me he was the only one in the country who knew what was both urgent and important and campaigned on precisely that. I have said some time ago that Mr. Trump is, in fact, the first president since FDR to have actually campaigned on the issues that he identified, defined, and messaged. He is the first one to also, with the clarity with which he campaigned on it, presented them to the American people. He has their approval. It's not a mandate, I don't mean that, but he has the clearest path forward as President of the United States on policy.
He understands what average Americans are worried about a better future, about better schools, about safer streets, about safer homes. He understands all of that. And what the left-wing media really doesn't get, and the intellectual elites don't get, is they got it wrong.
Yeah.
Now,
we don't care much about them anyway, Randy. You know that? I mean, I was just thinking about, you're talking about the intellectual elite in this country. I can't find them in academia. I mean, I really can't. They're not. There are no social critics. If there are a handful, and they are basically below the horizon. You can't find a Daniel Patrick Moynihan. You can't find a Nathan Glazer. Intellectual powerhouses on our campuses. They're mostly under contract to corporate America or to a think tank or to some ideological left-wing nonsense. And in business, they fall in lockstep with the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, often the GOP establishment, although that seems to be, perhaps, there may be some change in the air there. It's good to see. But the intellectual elites, I mean, Donald Trump has, as candidate, defined, as you say, the issues that are important to working men and women, their families, our middle class, to the nation itself. I want to turn to Enrique Peña Nieto, who has 12% approval rating in Mexico. He is coexisting with cartels of the most, the most violent anywhere in the world. And there has been no declaration of assistance from the State Department of any president to this point. There has been no concern on the part of the Business Roundtable, corporate America, the Chamber of Commerce about human rights, even though they're being violated daily in Mexico, and gruesomely so in many cases. I mean, this is quite a change for President Trump to stand up and say, look, things are going to change here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I just think that it's kind of silly when you think about it for a moment. Here you are, the person most in need of the attention of Donald Trump to help solve the problems for both Mexico and the rest of South America. And he's the one who cancels the meeting? Really? So you decide that you're going to cancel on the one who can actually help you? And Donald Trump had exactly the right response. Who cares? Fine. We'll do it without you because we're that good. We can dream big and we can build bigger.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I mean, NAFTA is going to be redone. It's going to be, or just simply disposed of. Canada is sitting there watching this play unfold. I do not believe that Justin Trudeau is going to, I don't believe this message will be lost on him. Do you?
I don't think so either. And I think you're going to see a lot more. I think a Great Britain, Canada, U.S. trade agreement would mean a whole lot more than NAFTA ever meant. It would mean you would have parity parties working together to take on the rest of the world. Okay. And when you've got democracies working together, it makes a big difference.
Okay, now I've just got to remind you, there's a policy issue here, and the President of the United States has said they're bilateral treaties. Only two, not three. See, there you go, messing with the New World Order. Randy Evans, great to have you with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks
Good to
so
be
much.
here.
Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you believe Mexican President Peña Nieto fully understands he's now dealing with President Donald Trump and not his passive predecessor? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'd like to hear from you. And follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs tonight. On Wall Street, another record-breaking day for stocks. The Trump rally goes on. The Dow Jones Industrials adding another 32 points to that record. We have a new all-time high on the Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq slipping from their record highs of just yesterday, down a fraction both. Volume on the big board, 3.6 billion shares. The Dow Jones Industrials up more than 9% since Donald Trump was elected president, despite warnings of a market crash. Do you remember that? All of the savants, the geniuses, the economists, including some folks like Mark Cuban and Paul Krugman, a Nobel Prize winner for crying out loud, but not necessarily, you may have noticed, in either politics or markets. Ford shares today closing lower after the car maker reported a quarterly loss, taking something of a hit after canceling its plant in Mexico, but thinking long-term, bigger returns are awaiting them. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. And up next, President Trump is fighting for all Americans.
It's time that somebody fought for our country and didn't let anyone take advantage of us anymore. The world has taken advantage of us for many years. Not going to happen anymore.
Mexico is learning that the hard way, and that's the subject of my commentary here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. A few thoughts now on the Mexican president and the mess that is his presidency and Mexico. Peña Nieto is an incredibly unpopular president, the most unpopular, in fact, in decades. Both he and his wife are accused of corruption, and corruption in Mexico is rampant. The powerful drug cartels hold sway over much of the country, if not most of it. Violence is a part of daily life in almost all of Mexico, and so is grinding poverty and pervasive corruption. Even though Mexico's economy has stalled, Peña Nieto did not hesitate to raise gasoline prices on his citizens, half of whom live below the poverty line. Think of that. 1 in 2 Mexican citizens live below the poverty line despite the immense wealth that has been transferred to Mexico through NAFTA. Setting off, by the way, widespread protests as he did raise those gasoline prices and riots. On the news of the canceled meeting between Peña Nieto and Trump, an already battered peso went tumbling against the dollar. The peso has now fallen 14% since President Trump's election. Many of our friends south of the border are outright panicked about President Trump's promise to build the border wall to enforce our immigration laws and our border security. And the uncertain future of NAFTA that President Trump today slammed as a one-sided trade deal. He is absolutely right. It is one-sided as it can be. Our trade deficit with Mexico topped $60 billion in 2015, and it will be all of that last year. The United States is Mexico's primary source of capital, its top export market, its largest trading partner. Peña Nieto has it now in his power, if you can imagine, to throw away tens of billions of dollars through his petulance and his petty macho, and his people will only suffer further. And now Press Secretary Sean Spicer suggests there could be a 20% tax or fee on Mexican goods that are shipped to this country. President Trump today told lawmakers no country will any longer be permitted to take advantage of America. Peña Nieto and his entire government are learning that President Trump is nothing like previous presidents they may have known. He is decisive, fiercely proud of America and our citizens, and a president who's already demonstrated he means what he says, and he says what he means. There are consequences for failing to take this president and this country seriously. And that is a big change for nearly every country in the world, and for more than a few of our citizens in this country. We all hope Mr. Peña Nieto is ready to be a mature leader and responsible partner for President Trump. If not, so be it. The Mexican citizens, however, are much like ours. They deserve better than what they've had in recent years. Now our quotation of the evening. This one from former President Ronald Reagan, who said, "When you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat." We're coming right back. President Trump promises his America First tax and trade policies will help all Americans.